Welcome back to Bid on You. We've got a special episode today featuring Bubele Booi. I don't know why I did that, but he is a Grammy-nominated, amazing South African producer and one of my truest pals in Los Angeles. We're going to learn from him how to redefine faith for ourselves. So stick around and welcome to Bid on You. I'm here with the legendary. I'm just kidding. I feel like I need to give you that though. It's giving Grammy. It's giving successful South African. We're going to get a fun accent this episode and it won't just be my own. So that'll be nice. But today we are talking about redefining faith. So for yourself as a young adult or adult versus maybe being forced to believe certain things or not believe certain things growing up. So we're excited to have you. Welcome to Bid on You. So we do this thing called Member of the Week. It's just a little shout out like excellence or Black excellence pop culture moments. So of course I figured we would do Blue Ivy Carter because I was looking at the excerpt with Gail and her father, Mr. Jay-Z, and how he was talking about how she really like grew her confidence on the Renaissance tour and obviously how she has been just like under scrutiny in the public eye since she was born and she didn't even choose that life. So I just wanted to shout out Blue because I feel like she is the legend. And she said, "Moo lady" to her mama. Like, it's
my time now.
She's only got a few minutes left. She better make it count. That's why she's putting that little movie out because she knows Blue is coming for the throne.
I would just like to formally say that none of these views represented by the host are held by me or myself or any parties of my business conglomerate.
He's like, Beyonce, I still want to work with you, girl. We still locked in. Ain't no switching up. So, speaking of that, let's get into the tea. So tell us about your journey, not the literal voyage, but metaphorically, from South Africa to Los Angeles and just sort of what you do, how you got here, a quick little bio.
I'm Bubele Booi, born in South Africa, Cape Town, South Africa, lived in Johannesburg, South Africa, which is like the big gritty city of...
Ooh, not gritty.
Oh yeah, it's gritty. It's like...
The New York?
It's like the New York, but not... Way more trees than New York.
Seattle. Got it.
Yeah, it's but it is like Johannesburg is where all the money is made and it's not a tourist destination. Like if you want to pop in, you can pop in for a weekend. We'll show you a good time, but like Cape Town is just stunning. That's the beaches and the mountains and the wine farms. So I feel like I have the Joburg grit and the little bit of Cape Town sprinkle. You know, just a little bit of
something flair for them.
So I got the pearls going
right,
on,
exactly. Let them know.
So born and raised, and I made my way to the States in 2018 when I went to grad school in New York. New York is like the city that I fell in love with. I came on a gap year when I was 18. I just thought there was something funny about an African coming to America to help with aid. I felt like there was something...
I have an actual camera to look at because I'm so used to like looks at camera, but I can actually look at the camera. You can
actually look at the camera.
Y'all hear that? That's so funny.
And
well, we need all the help we can get.
So that was my little gap year. I spent like 4 months in New York, but I was like in Smithtown, which is a very random town. It's in Long Island. On Long Island.
So you really were just in a state in the United.
But then I would go into the city every weekend. I just fell in love with New York and I was like, okay, I'm coming back here. No matter what, I'm coming back. And so finished off university in Cape Town, which I loved, and then made my way to New York to do grad school. I somehow convinced a board of bankers to give me money to study music in New York. Don't know how that happened.
It's the accent. I'm telling you.
The thing is, it's not an accent if everyone in the room has the same accent, do you know? So it was like a bunch of South Africans and somehow
really?
It was very weird. I sat down, they like fly you in for the interview. So I'm like, okay, this is weird for 24 hours.
Not flew out.
It's crazy. I've never had a sugar daddy like that. And they pick you up in a car, you come and you sit down and you're in this waiting lobby and there's a girl next to me. I'm like, hey, so what are you applying for? And she's like, oh, I'm going to Harvard for nuclear physics.
Same.
And I was
what
like,
a coincidence.
That's tough.
That's crazy.
That's tough.
Are y'all all vying for like the same funds?
Yeah.
So you're in there like, it's like an audition. Like you're like, I hope I get it and not you.
Yeah. And I'm there like, I'm trying to make music.
Well, music heals. So it's kind of the same.
I don't know. We got in there and within 10 minutes, the whole panel was discussing the merits of Kanye West and I can't.
Oh, Lord.
It was a whole debate. I don't know how it happened.
There like,
But it was great, and
Yeah.
it somehow worked in my favor, and I'm very
Wow.
thankful to God for that. And so
Right.
that brought me to New York, which was very much a strategic move of getting into the music industry.
Mm-hmm.
And New York was my foot in the door, and then stayed there for 2.5 years, graduated, and made my way to LA post-pandemic.
Okay, so 2 questions within that. What made you want to pursue music? Was that something always from like your childhood, or you were just like, I'll give this a stab? How did that come to be?
My dad was the first rock star that I knew. He would lead family prayer time with his guitar, and like he'd like put it on a chair and like play the guitar, and we'd all sing together. And
not the Jackson 5.
Oh yeah, we sang in 5-part harmony in my family. That is like me and my mom were always fighting for this because we sort of have the same vocal range, so we're always fighting for the same.
I'm your replacement.
I'm like, I'm doing alto. She's like, no, I'm doing alto, and it was a whole battle.
Sorry, mama.
Yeah, I had to learn tenor, but that's sort of where I got my love for music. I started to learn from him. And then after that, I'm such a nerd. I love computers and like building computers and video games and coding and all of that.
All the tech.
All of that. So as a kid, those were sort of my two worlds, and they were very separate of one another. And then one day my dad brought back, he happened to work with a company that helps distribute Apple in Africa.
Okay.
And so the first Apple product came to South Africa, I think 2012. No, not 2012, yo, I'm lying. When I was 13.
Okay.
So I don't know what year that was. But
some time ago,
some time ago. When I was that was the first time, I think I was 12 or 13, and I'd never seen a Mac book in my life. And it was the strangest thing.
Yeah.
And I sat down, opened up his laptop, and you have to get this thing called type approval, which means that if a product comes into a country, they have to be like, it's cool to sell. And so we got the first one to like approve. And it was just like so strange to me.
Right.
And within 2 hours, I'd clicked on this little guitar icon that bounced up and down. That was GarageBand. My whole life changed in that moment. It was like, this is the exact intersection between the two things that I love the most. And
like brought to your doorstep, literally.
Exactly. Music and technology just right in the middle. And when I decided I wanted to be a producer, that was just sitting there in that chair. And then I've just been pursuing that since.
Have you ever felt like a shift in kind of, because I feel like the producers typically are seen as more behind the scenes versus like the act, the talent. So what's that? How does that feel? Or was there like a shift in you of like, okay, now I'm not going to be fighting for alto. Now I'm just going to be making some beats. Like, it's that simple.
I've always loved the idea of being a producer because for me, it feels like the best of both worlds. You can be at the forefront and the cutting edge of culture and everything that's around you that's exciting.
Right.
Yet you can still live a normal lifestyle. And more importantly, my family can live a normal lifestyle. So for me, it's very important to raise a family. That is something that I look forward to in the future. And I don't really, speaking of Blue Ivy, like the fact that she's just cast into the spotlight from the moment she took a breath.
Yeah.
It's tough. It comes with a lot of perks for her, but also comes with a lot of difficulties, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And for me, I would really love to have a life where I can go down to the grocery store in a dirty sweatpants and like a t-shirt and no one cares. But, on a random Wednesday, Auntie Beyonce walks through the living room and my kids are like, Auntie Beyonce, like.
I'm sure we would all love Auntie Beyonce. You can come walk through my living room right now. No kids, just me. Truly.
So, that's amazing. That's why I love it. I think being behind the scenes is the best of all the things.
Oh, I love that. I think that's so cool because I feel like so many people, you never really get to hear the passion for the behind the scenes. Kind of like when I worked in PR every now and then, like the publicists like to be the movers and the shakers. But then it's just rare, I feel like in music, that anyone wants to take anything that's not like the forefront.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's refreshing. But I mean, that speaks to your character. The girls don't know, but this is fitting. Okay. And then why did you leave New York for LA? I know because LA is the best city, but what was your reason?
Big claim.
I think, you know how I feel. We'll get to that later, but.
I left New York because of two things. So when the pandemic hit, I was in New York, and New York was ground zero in America in very many ways. So just it was the weirdest thing seeing this apocalyptic thing happen around me. I stayed for about 8 months or 9 months. And then at the end of that year, I was like, okay, I need to make some decisions here because everyone that I knew and loved, even the Americans, had left New York. So I was fundamentally alone at that point.
Right.
And it was a really hard decision to make. But during that time, we started having conversations with a publisher out here in LA and a management team, and the whole team was out here in LA. And so all the opportunities, the entire music industry just evacuated from New York. And so it became a thing of, what do I need to do for my business?
Right.
It also was an emotional decision on, I've known New York at 100. And even if I build it back up to 80, it's going to feel like a 20% deficit. Whereas if I go to a city that I've never known and just build it from zero, every time I gain ground, it's just like an opening up of a new level. It's just like becoming more and more beautiful.
Yeah.
And I thought that if I'm going to start from zero, I'd rather start from zero in a place that I've never known at 100.
Wow. That's crazy, honestly, because I feel like so many people were like, oh, everything will bounce back, but nothing is the same. Like, obviously, as we know, but not to be Drake, but truly nothing was ever the same. But I feel like for me, I think I had a similar experience just going home, though, during the pandemic. So then I was able to, like, come back to LA and be like, okay, we're trying again. But on the other side of this crazy, like, life expediting maturity level for most people experience. But going back really quick before we get into the nitty gritty, faith-wise, because I feel like everything you're talking about requires a crazy level of faith. Like, that always, obviously, about you impresses me. But how was working with Auntie Beyoncé?
It was both the most exciting and scariest thing that's ever happened to me, I think. Of course. It was a learning experience. It was hard in many ways and amazing in many ways. I learned some hard lessons along the way, but I also learned some really great things and met incredible people. And so, yeah, it feels surreal just when I recount the entire experience. So I'm very grateful for it. I'm very, very grateful.
I feel like you're so humble about it, but that's, I would be like, hey, nice to meet you. I worked with Beyonce that one time. I'm Marissa, and I'm Blue Ivy's godmother. So let's get into some more of the faith side of things, since we're talking about kind of redefining and restructuring. So y'all were making music at home, but were you going to church? Like, did you grow up in a Christian background, or like any faith, any spirituality? How was that growing up?
Yes, I grew up in a Christian family, went to a Christian school. So, yeah, faith has been from the moment that I arrived in this world. Right. It has been, part of my existence.
Kind of like the cornerstone of it all.
Yeah. My parents very early on were involved in like helping set up churches and planting churches. Oh, okay. For many years, we were like helping a church, and it would like meet in a high school hall over the weekends, and they were very involved in that. Many of my closest friends in high school were kids of missionaries. Okay. So that's why, like, as a kid, there were certain things that I would say with an American accent, because like 4 of my closest friends were Americans. Okay. And it's just been, and then growing up in a Christian school, I was in the same school.
They were missionaries in South Africa.
They were missionaries in South Africa. And then I went to a Christian school, and I was in that same school for 14 years, like 2 years before grade 1, and then all the way up to matric, which is 12th grade. Okay. In the same school. And so, yeah, it has been an all-encompassing experience. Right.
How was growing up going to a Christian school? Because I feel like the equivalent in the States is like Catholic school. Maybe, but other than that, I don't even know what that would look like otherwise.
I have no experience of Catholic school, so I wouldn't be able to know. But from my understanding of it, I don't think it was as hectic as Catholic school. Okay. But the school was definitely very conservative in its outlooks, even problematic. I mean, there's a point where, looking back, the school would make very hectic decisions.
So, with Christian school, is that like morning prayer? Are we like, okay, y'all don't even have a pledge. I was going to say, before we say the Pledge of Allegiance.
No, we don't do the pledge.
Which is crazy. I don't know why we did, but anyway.
Yeah, I won't comment on that.
Right, but prayer.
So we would have, essentially it's this like God and Christianity and faith is sort of written into the bylaws of the school, like in the sense
curriculum.
of like, yeah, the curriculum is very much from a Christian centric standpoint. We would have assembly, and during assembly, it's like once a week when the whole school gathers in the hall, and then during that time, we might sing a few songs. We'd have a youth group. I mean, the school was founded by a church, so the building was first a church,
Oh, okay.
and then it became a school.
Right.
And so, though it's very interwoven in those ways.
Okay.
But it gets blurry because then sometimes you're like, at what point is policy of the school some sort of expression of a belief point that maybe not all people subscribe to?
Right. Or all people here that are supposed to be represented by the school.
That's something that you have to understand, is that just because you're at a Christian school does not mean that everyone who's in the school is a Christian.
Ooh.
And that was a very interesting thing. I mean,
really?
There's a lot of things that you don't know as a kid, because as a kid, you only know what you see around you. You have no way to compare things and contrast things.
Right.
But later on, we'd hear of so many problematic things that would happen in the school, or certain decisions that were made that were like, okay, that's kind of strange.
Yeah.
Why is that made?
Yeah.
And it becomes really interesting when faith is such a personal thing. How do you impose the way in which it must be executed on other people?
Right.
You know, I mean, there were times when teachers were fired because they were living with their boyfriend. That's a non-Christian thing to do by the standards of the school, and that teacher was a very loved teacher. And so,
what is the, like, hey girl, we heard, so pack your things, let's go?
I have no idea what that conversation would look like.
You just knew she was there one day and gone the next?
Yeah.
Stop.
There have been other conversations where we had a teacher who was incredibly forward thinking and really into mentoring boys into being men and having the hard, tough conversations and the honest conversations. Before we knew it, he was gone too. It was very interesting to see those kinds of things happening around us, and then as you get to high school, you start to realize something's afoot.
Wait a minute. Not something is going on.
Something's up. But as that happens, I think that also the world is changing, and so the school has changed, and as leadership has changed now. The principal, I think, who's the current principal now, I think he has way more of a sober mentality, and it's been very interesting to see how do you balance that. But it's interesting because at the same time, like, something that we knew is like pastors' kids are always the most troublesome.
Yeah.
We had kids in our school. It's like, if this group of people are throwing a party, I mean,
we already know what it is.
Yeah, the Gosmans say there's a party going down. It's going down.
Yikes.
But
meanwhile, the teacher can't live with her boyfriend.
There was a don't ask, don't tell thing.
Okay.
Like, a very interesting thing is, so the drinking age in South Africa is 18.
Okay.
In our school, you are not allowed to drink, full stop, even when you're a senior. And specifically if you're in school leadership. So we have like the UK.
You can't drink if you legally can drink.
Yeah, you can't.
Could the teachers drink, like administration?
Sure.
Because they're grown?
I guess.
So just,
but it was sort of like, the best way I can explain it to an American is it's sort of like Hogwarts. You have like houses, we wear uniforms, you have head boy, head girl, you have prefects, you have all of that. And if you are one of the prefects or in leadership, even worse, you are not allowed to ever be caught with alcohol ever. And that's all well and good. But at the end of the year, we have the matric dance, which is what I guess you would call as prom.
Okay.
And teachers have a very much a don't ask, don't tell policy there. Okay. Like, we don't know where you're going for the after party. We have no affiliation to the after party.
That had nothing to do with me.
Where are you guys going after this? You're going home, right? And
your eye is twitching.
Yeah.
How does that sort of shape, or how has that shaped your personal journey with faith and like spirituality, and like coming from obviously a household that believes something and then going to a school that believes something and then going to church on the weekends? I'm assuming like that is sort of every facet of your being as a like child to 18 years old.
It's very easy to become indoctrinated. I think it's why I hold the stance that I hold now, is that a lot of people's faith isn't their own. It is one that is not forced upon them, but has been thrust upon them by someone else.
An inherited faith.
Yeah, they've inherited it.
Yeah.
And I feel that when you're a child, I think there is that element, which is great.
Right.
It's like, it's something that you learn, but there comes a point where you have to start unpacking and unraveling and deconstructing your own belief systems and understanding why do you believe and what do you believe and what parts of it do you believe and which parts do you think are not quite up to standard to what do you think is whatever your belief system is.
Right.
And I think that for me, that really happened in university.
Okay.
Where I left this Christian school and left my home, and it became this, it was no longer about like everyone agreeing on something.
Yeah.
You'd sit down and say, I believe this, and someone would grill you, and they'd be more educated on your own faith than you are.
Right. I'm like, girl, do you believe? Because you know more than me.
Exactly.
I'm confused.
And that's when I really started diving into like, I need this faith thing to be my own thing. I think that surface level just really, for me personally, I struggle with, because that surface level is just so, it's just easy consumption of faith. But faith shapes so much of, I think, who you are as a person that it shouldn't be taken lightly.
Define surface level.
I think that there are a lot of people in the Christian faith who have never questioned it because they've been taught that it is bad to
Start
question.
Literally drinking my tea.
I think they've been taught that you do not question God. My belief is counter to that. I believe that if God is who he says he is, and he is genuinely the creator of the entirety of the universe, there is not a single question that I could ask that he does not have the answer to.
And doesn't know I'm going to ask it already.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean that I deserve an answer. He might decide never to give me an answer. There are some things I might never get an answer to. But to ask them it does not at all threaten his existence. Oof. For me, it is the funniest thing when I see Christians up in arms about movies. They're like, this is what the devil
blasphemy.
I'm like, do you really think a movie is going to change the existence of God? Like, do you think he is threatened by that, even in the slightest? I think that any movie that does that, it's actually more of it's an opportunity to go in and have a conversation with someone more than anything.
Yeah.
And I think we're missing those opportunities by shutting things down and like indoctrinating and oppressing. I think that Christianity is a wildly oppressive structure. And I mean, there are lots of things that I've had to unpack. As a Black African, I've had to sit there and understand and unpack this thought of how can I believe in the faith system that was used to subjugate my people for many years. Right. And to culturally eradicate parts of my being. And my people. And that's when I started to understand that Christianity as a faith and religion as a construct is very separate conversation to God. Ooh. And having a relationship with God and trying to understand the character of God. Yeah. Even the way that we read the Bible right now, this is where I'm really at, is I think the way that we read the Bible is wildly misinformed and highly problematic because we lack context. Yeah. Like, preachers are great at what they do, but to me, I sort of view most preachers as Christian motivational speakers more than I do theologians. Okay. Because they're picking a verse and speaking about it completely out of context and then using it to make us feel good, which has a place, but it's motivational speaking. It's not theology. And we also lack so much context, like something that I've been so encouraged by, and shout out to my mom for putting me onto this. This podcast is the Bible from the Middle Eastern perspective. Ooh. And it is so important because there are so many things that culturally we could never even know because we're interpreting it from a Westerner's viewpoint. You know, that like there are so many stories where the Bible, like for the Lion's Den, just to see that first part of the book is written in one language, then the second part is written in a different style, and then the third part is written text. Yes, and then the first part is written. The last part is written as the same as the first part.
Right, right. What happened in the middle?
Yeah, but now this is super interesting because it shows you so much about like the characters perception and like what they were forced to do, and that, okay, were they really trying to assimilate to the culture of the time, this new land that they were in? It tells you so much. Like there are times even with Moses and God where God says, go get, like, I think it was 3 objects, like a dove, a sheep, and something else, I forget, and let the blood run into a hole. And we read that and we're like, that's kind of weird, but okay. What we're missing is that is a Middle Eastern wedding ritual. And by God saying that to Abraham, and don't quote me on this, I might be getting the wrong characters, but just by like those kind of revelations, like, oh, God is actually
making a covenant.
He's making a covenant with him in a way that we've completely missed.
Right. We just like, why are we killing animals? Not be, I don't even fool animals like that to be like, let's go down and slaughter you real quick with the priest because I lied this week. Like that is a lot.
There's just so
but like
much
also
context.
We don't know what that means.
We don't
like
know
we have
what it
Veggie Tales. And then to your point earlier, especially that's really what I'm up against, and I know we talk about this a lot in our Bible study, is like as a Black woman, especially now as an adult, like I kind of don't have the parental, they can send an email or show up at the school protection, so it really is just like feels like me against the world and the Lord. And I really struggle with, especially, my people came over on the boat, we came from the same place. Well, now we know we might be cousins because I did my 23andMe. But anyway, the other side of the family, we got over here to Alabama. And I feel like in the Black American culture, faith is like the bedrock. Like it is so strong, like from slavery and on. And it's so interesting to me that the people that have been oppressed the most in this nation, but also pretty much the world of darker skin tone, like have the strongest belief systems, have the strongest faiths, like have the you don't question God, or like just have this steadfastness that is insane. Like I'll talk to my grandma and be like, you literally walk to school with the rocks being thrown at you in Jim Crow South, being called the N-word, and you're like, but God is good and God is faithful and he'll make it right. Huh? You know what I mean? And so it's trying to deconstruct. Half of it is the Western side of it, of using, slaves obey your masters, right? Like you use this text to, and this religion, to subjugate, to oppress, to control, to enslave an entire race of people and justify it and tell them that the God that we all are supposed to serve finds you better than me. And now we're not doing that no more. But at the same time, we still have full out faiths like Mormonism, etc., and full out segregation pretty much in the American church of white church, Black church, Hispanic church, Asian church. And the church that I go to, like you visited, is probably truly the only church I've ever been in where I'm really like, this is what heaven will look like, all shapes and sizes, races and creeds. But again, we're still pulling from pretty much modern day, and I'm not a theologian, but modern day, we're really pulling from King James Version. And he owned slaves. You know what I mean? So like, I'm supposed to sit up here, especially as a woman, I feel like it goes on another level.
Yeah, because Bible was written in a highly patriarchal society. So I think that's why I've been actively trying to, I think there are 3 things here at play. It's the voice of God, the voice of man, and the third and most dangerous, it's the voice of man acting as God. And that is the most dangerous of all of the things. And it's so hard to actually dissect and find truth. And I find that the only way that I am trying to find truth is by really zooming out and finding the character of God.
Okay.
I think that if we go pixel by pixel, we are going to find a lot of human nature and a lot of cultural context that was imprinted by humans.
Absolutely.
Is this, like, for instance, just looking at translations, one person could change one word, and that changes the way in which we see everything for an entire people group.
Right.
And the people who are interpreting the Bible had their own agendas that were at play here. And so it's very hard for me to take any one thing as the be-all and end-all. I have to zoom out and get as much context as I possibly can. When I'm reading a Bible verse, I'm not just reading the words on the text. I'm trying to understand what was the original text, what was the original context, who was writing it, where were they writing it from. The fact that someone's writing a certain Bible verse and they happen to be like in a certain town where historically XYZ is happening, that's so important because it's going to affect how you see everything. Who are they writing to?
Yeah.
Like these are
The
fundamental.
whole New Testament of like Paul being like, it's better to be single, but if you can't wait, go and get married. Like he's talking to a specific group that was
He's
going through
talking to a
something
specific
specifically
group.
at that time. And
And-
we take it and we're like, well, girl, you can't work for us because you live with your boyfriend.
It's
You know
a
what
really
I mean?
tough situation. It's
Yeah.
very tough. And I think that in many ways, I think God, that's where God thrives. It's like he didn't, as much as people say the Bible is the word of God, and I'm like, I do believe that. But I think that he's given us more, it's more of like clues to find him
Mhm.
than it is a blueprint of who he is. Because if you think that a deity that is so complex that could create the universe and has created things that we as humans haven't even fathomed of could be condensed into like a book that's this thick,
Right, on rice paper.
that is a very fundamentally arrogant thing to do.
Hmm.
And for you to think you could speak for that intention of that being is even more arrogant.
Woo.
To see people like really oppress the rights of other humans
Yeah.
using the Bible,
Yeah.
something I see in America a lot with specifically gay rights or transgender rights. And it's like, how can you read the Bible and see the God that I see from these stories and still think that this person wants you to oppress this human?
Right.
I'm
Where are you getting
baffled.
oppression here? Because I'm not seeing it.
Yeah.
So
I
can
would-
you point that out?
I
What
would-
Bible will y'all read?
Exactly. I would like for
Or I'm pro-life, but I'm pro-death penalty. Like, which one is it?
I don't
God
know,
wants the
those-
babies to be born, but he wants them babies to grow up and be killed. Or don't let that baby come out brown or black. Then we don't want any assistance for that baby. But as long as you
Exactly.
had a baby, you must have it. Or else
there's-
jail.
There's too much nuance on these
Yeah.
things, and I think that what happens is we're conflating politics and we've like religiousized
Mhm.
politics in
It's supposed to be
America.
separation of church and state.
Yeah, it's really tough. Like nothing is in a silo, and so my thing is now more than ever we have to be taking in the full context. We have to step back and like, how is this affecting anything that I think? How does
Right.
this affect the people around me? And how does this line up to the character of God?
And what we know about him to be true.
That is it.
How are you zooming out? Like what's a practical, so if you're reading, like I have my study Bible, right? And so
Sure.
I'll like dig in that way, but how are you sort of zooming out and getting the context? I mean, you might be like doing more research than the average person, but what could someone do when they're like, okay, shoot, like I was such a cuss. They don't know where to start with this. It's like, okay, maybe I walked away from the faith or I grew up and I know a few for God so loved the world, but like, now what? I want to read the Bible, but I don't know if I can see it as the ultimate way to know God and nothing else. Like, what would you recommend? And it could be personal to you or just like general, something that has helped you.
Pick the thing that bugs you the most and start there.
The issue.
The issue or the verse or the thing that it really does not sit well. Start there. That is, I think, the fundamental.
Trying to stress the people out.
Yeah, I think that faith isn't supposed to be easy,
Ooh.
and I believe that.
Starts crying. No, literally, I feel like God has sent people in here to read me today, but go on.
I just think that it's a puzzle that we're all trying to figure out, and I am no theologian. I don't know what the accent is, the emphasis, but I just know what I'm on this journey to try and find truth and try to get closer to it. And I know that I'm going to die trying.
Absolutely.
But as I move through life, I start to understand, I think, through the word, like reading the Bible and then studying the context around it and really understanding things, I start to be able to sift through things.
I feel like oh my gosh, we're going to have you back because I feel like there are so many different directions to go in this and so much to dig into. And I feel like it's trying to take what we have experienced or what we know that like maybe worked last month that may not even work this next month and try and make it accessible for people. I feel like, especially me coming from the Bible Belt, like meeting people who have just never even known God to be how we're talking about him, like someone you can talk to and have a relationship and like Jesus as his son. Like they just knew like, okay, bad, or they only see it as like religion or being religious. And trying to simplify that in the way of like the way that I'm talking to you right now, like even though he is holy and all of those things, I don't want to be, but you could really just say, God, what's going on? You know what I mean? In the same way we're talking right now.
Okay, so here's a question for you.
Not me on my own show getting red.
How do you how do you balance guilt and your belief?
I don't do it well. I'll say that. I don't balance it well. Guilt, I think for me, I refer to it as like convictions. So I think we all have different things that we feel convicted about, whether that be like based on a lot of indoctrinated things, some things that you may or may not still ascribe to. I think especially as women, people could not even consider themselves religious, spiritual, whatever, and they can still be like, oh, I'm considered a whore or whatever because I've slept with whoever and all those things. So I think society has a lot of things that they picked up from different faiths, patriarchal society especially. And so it's trying to reconcile, like I was mentioning off camera, like what does God really say about this? And in the context, like you said, but also what does he want for me to do? Because there's a verse that talks about, you can eat meat, but don't judge your fellow believer that doesn't eat meat. And the believer that doesn't eat meat, don't judge the one who does. And Jesus drank wine is what I always say. Like, for example, I have friends who be like, oh my gosh, I'm like, I can't drink and like, whatever, especially in college. I used to sort of be that way. And then I realized I was making that a God. Like I was so worried about if I drink, is God going to be mad at me? And it's like, okay, well, are you moving in a way that's outside of your character and who he knows you to be? No. You might just have a little bit of a funnier joke. The accent might be thicker. So I think it's just trying to be honest with myself about the conviction I actually feel. Because I feel like when you feel like this doesn't serve me, whether you believe or not, like highest self, spirituality, all of that. If that person is just not good for you versus God is like, sex is bad. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's a little bit of both. Who knows?
It's a very tough one, right? Because there's two elements at play here where it's like, I think I saw this video and I thought it was so, so true of like, people be like, I'm at peace with my decision. And it's like,
okay, girl.
Okay, cool. Like, I'm glad you're at peace. But the thing is, if I go down to the store and I steal a chocolate, I'm at peace because that chocolate is nice. I didn't have the chocolate. Right. Now I have the chocolate and I got away with stealing it. I'm at peace with my decision. So peace isn't really a good way for me to decide of what is right. Conviction can also not be a good way for me to decide because it might be years of church guilt and indoctrination and societal norms that have been oppressed upon you.
Right.
So if you can't trust the peace and if you can't trust the conviction, then how on earth do you even start to make decisions?
Discernment.
Where does that begin?
Begging for it is where I'm at.
Exactly.
I just be like, God, can you please give me some discernment? Should I go right, left, sit still?
That's it.
Truly. And I think that's what he wants, though, because I think if there was a way to cookie cut it, a human's child, we do one thing, we have one good day and I don't even pray. You know what I mean? It's like we just want to do it on our own and he knows that. So like we need, and when you were saying earlier, like the Bible and the reference about it, like being bread, right? The word of God being bread, but then also the word of God says man shall not live on bread alone and woman shall not live on bread alone, right? So it's like having all of these things that connect you to God who lives within you. I remember when I was little and I was like, well, God, where is he, mama? And my mom was like, he lives within you. For me, love music too. Worship music is when I feel the closest to the Lord. Our friend Terrence, he be going through the Bible like Paul is crazy. Like that's how he feels close and feels his presence. You know what I mean? So for everyone, you're obviously such an intellectual with it. So you're finding him in the different contexts and the different translations. Like I think he is, I am, and he's all. So, and we're made in his image. So some people may be creating, like Morgan is making short films. Like I think it's cool because we get to do it with him. And before I used to be like, okay, I have to do this for you. And now it's like, I get to do it with you. And I feel like that is more freeing than trying to follow a rule book.
Yeah.
Because basically then we just running around under the law with Instagram instead.
Yeah. We
posting the 10 Commandments on the timeline instead of the tablet. That's good. That was good right there. They're going to steal that trademark. The girls are going to print that one out.
Yeah. It's an impossible. Yeah. I think that as long as we understand that everything is nuanced and there's no black and white in almost anything, I think we're in a good place.
God is gray.
Because, yeah.
Great and gray.
I think there's only one thing in the entire world that I can say is fundamentally bad always. Oh, there's only one. If you can name another one, I'll be very impressed.
I'm listening.
Because I've been trying to grow this list. The only thing on this earth, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
that is not gray
Mm-hmm.
is the molestation of children.
Period. I was about to say it better be children.
That's
There's
it.
no confusion.
Whether physical, sexual, doesn't matter, emotional, there is no
There's no
reason for any of
consenting
that.
there. Right. Everything
But
else you can consent for.
lying, killing,
Mm-hmm.
stealing, all of those things
Mm-hmm.
could be gray.
And that's the part of scripture where I really do, where God was like, you'd be better to cut off your eyeball and throw it into the sea. I think he was standing on business. Like, I think he really meant that. He really was like, do not play with the kids. And I agree.
Yeah.
So we can agree on that for
Yeah.
sure. Other than that,
what else is like? No, it's just like if you're killing a child and I have a reason to stop you, and maybe
Right.
the only way that I do that is by just killing you.
mm-hmm.
Do I do that? Is it what is the
Right.
gray?
Because then who's making the rules? Are we
What does
twisting
it-
them for what we want?
I think that we are. All humans are fundamentally trying to get an outcome that benefits them.
Yeah.
And
And
I
say
think
that it's
that-
coming from something else.
Yeah, and I think that I'm trying to have the awareness that even I in myself and in my research am maybe trying to do that.
Mhm.
And that's a hard thing to do. To come to grips with it of like, oh, am I trying to justify a certain stance that I have? Or because I don't like being told what not to do?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I actually coming in with a non-biased perspective and allowing myself to get to an answer that I might not like?
Oof.
I don't know, but
And then accepting it and moving accordingly.
yeah, because that's tough.
I be getting the answer. I just be like, oh, well, I don't think that's what you meant. Surely not. Because
Right.
now we got to change up. It's a
Oh,
lot.
changing as a human is tough.
Mm-hmm.
It's tricky.
And on that note, we're going to do what we call opening bids, which is just questions, letters, etc. from our viewers at home so they can write in. But I think you answered a lot of them because I started asking questions personally, so I hope they help y'all. But what advice would you give? And I guess we kind of have answered this, but outside of, starting at the text that bothers you or whatever that may be, what would you give if, maybe someone has never even had an encounter with faith, spirituality, or maybe they grew up in the church, were baptized as a child, walked away, never came back? Like, where would you start if you had to start today? What piece of advice would you give?
With
How do I get into the Lord, get into faith, get into it?
I say finding a small group of people
Mm-hmm. That's good.
who believe in that faith and just joining with them.
And
Like,
vibing.
just walking with them, just hanging out. That's what I think is church. I think we've strayed so far away from what church, the
Mhm.
original vision of what church is.
Right.
And so I think that just a bunch of people hanging out and trying to find truth and doing life together, it's amazing.
I
You know,
love
just
that.
I think that's it. Just find people and hang out with them.
Just do life together.
Yeah, and then ask questions and like
Yeah.
engage
Observe.
with each other. Ask the tough things. I mean, a friend of mine said something that really stuck with me. He was like, I don't think there's a single good what was the word? There's no role model of a single man in the Bible.
Mm.
Outside of Jesus, like
Yeah, no one's perfect.
name one, or the opposite. Name a married man that I can look up to in the Bible. And I was like, that's hectic.
Waits for the answer. Yeah.
So we're like, as men, we're like, we need to be this. But I'm like, it's
Mm-mm.
not even in the Bible, my boy. Like where's the...
You're
like,
not gonna be the first. You're not. It's not gonna be you. It's never gonna be you.
And so that's so tough when you're like, oh, even this ideal that we somehow got along
Yeah.
the way doesn't exist in the text that
Yeah.
we so much
We making all this up
respect
as we go.
You know? And
It's
we're all
exhausting.
making
We
it
do
up.
too much.
So we have to have, it's just the counsel. Like, my friend has something that I love, and he calls it the counsel of the final word.
Mm.
And these are people in your life that
Mhm.
you trust
Wise counsel.
and that you depend on. And when they say something, you do it even if you don't like the answer.
Oof.
The counsel of the final word, because these are people you trust that have your best interest and have more
Ooh.
knowledge than you can
Wow.
possibly have in that moment. For me, those are people that I'll text when
Yeah.
something happens. And I'm like, hey, sometimes just texting them to tell them this is what's happening
Mhm.
stops any bad things from happening because now they have knowledge of certain
And they can pray for
situations
you and intercede.
that are in it. Sometimes it's just being like, boys, I don't know what's going on here. And they'll be like, bro, think about it this way.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll give me new perspective. And sometimes it is them saying, okay, you're being an idiot. This is what you need to do. And I won't like it.
Mm-hmm.
But I do it.
Yeah.
Because the counsel of the final word has nothing but your best interests at heart.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's beautiful.
I think that not a lot of people pick friends by picking people that will allow them to do whatever they want.
Absolutely.
I feel like we're in this age where people are scared to say no to one another and be like, dude, that's not a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's just...
Don't do that.
It's like we're all doing it for the plot. And I'm like...
the plot is horrible. Bro, they left the movie. The plot is Titanic.
Anymore.
Yeah, we're all shooting the Titanic.
At this point. I cannot allow for any more thickening of my personal plot.
We are at the end. Like, literally. So the climax has happened 20 times. The people have left the theater.
Yes.
It's a silent film at this point.
The plot shall not
Truly.
Thicken. So
in Jesus' name, I claim that for myself.
Yeah. I don't know.
Smooth sail. I want Happy Days. I want Three's Company vibes in 2024.
I think if there's anything that I would give advice to anyone, it's just go in with curiosity and ask questions. Mm-hmm. There's not a single question that you shouldn't ask. Mm. Ask it, and ask it to people who might be in positions of authority or like thought leaders, and like ask them, and they might not have good answers for you. Mm-hmm. Push them on it. I loved walking up to my pastor and being like, so what do you think that I as a black man should do?
Do all this at your own risk. Disclaimer.
No, straight up, because if they haven't thought about it, then they should go think about it or help me find a resource that will maybe help me get to the element of truth that I'm looking for. Mm. And if they think they have the answers, I think the biggest thing for me is just like being able to say, I don't know. And I'm going to say right now, with all the things that I've said, all of it is I don't know, but I'm trying. That is it. That is
and being okay with not knowing.
That's the only advice that I have. Like everything that I'm saying is me being like, I'm not sure about that because what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And I don't know, but I am actively trying to get as much information as I can.
Oof. That's a word. I feel like I'm going to start saying, I'm going to steal that from you and be saying it to people. And then the final question is for you, actually, which I feel like you kind of just said. But we like to do a little final word for our guests, which is how are you going to bid on you? So bid on yourself in this next season. What are you going to do with basically what you just said? Like, you don't know, but what are some plans? Maybe that's giving yourself more grace for not knowing. Maybe that's not doing as much research, doing more research, finding more small groups, going to church more or less. How's B gonna bid on him?
I think that the way that I bid, not bet.
It's a double entendre there. Okay. You're following.
Great. The way that I'm gonna bid on myself is by continuing to zoom out and zoom in at the same time. I think just gaining more understanding, more context, and then not pressuring myself so much to have an answer always. I think that that's helpful to me. Yeah. And then it's also helpful for me. I think something I really need to do is to do the work of unpacking and rolling back the effects of indoctrination. Because I really do believe this faith. I do believe in God, but I don't believe everything that I've been led to believe.
Absolutely.
And I think I'm still grappling with the negative repercussions of some of those thought patterns and of those things. And I'm seeing those effects currently in my life.
100%. It's like God is not letting us ignore it anymore because it's right there in our face.
It's really hard. And so I'm trying to, I think something I need help with is, forgiveness to the entire structure for the whatever trauma it might have inflicted, because it makes it so much harder now to just go about certain things in life and engage, even though I do believe this. Yeah. And so I think having grace for myself and my journey is like I think, a really important part of this.
I'll be praying for you on that too. The forgiveness is a heavy one.
Mm-hmm.
But we can do it. We don't know. So when in doubt, we don't know.
I don't know, but I'm trying.
But I'm trying. And thank y'all for watching. We hope you're trying too. Thanks for tuning in to Bit on You, and we'll see you next time. Woo!